Welcome to Grit, the Real Estate Growth Mindset podcast, hosted by Brian Charlesworth, founder of Sisu. Sisu provides growth automation software for real estate. You'll hear stories from real estate thought and technology leaders, team owners, and brokers on how they grew their business in a rapidly changing industry. You'll learn how to transform your brokerage and teams into a high-performing and analytics-driven business so you have a new, durable, competitive advantage against disruption in your market. So let's get right into it.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Grit podcast. I'm Brian Charlesworth. I'm the founder of Sisu and the host of the show. And if you want to hear about grit, you're going to hear a lot of it today. So we have Stephen Myers on the show with us today. He's the owner and CEO of Urban Cool Brokerage, or team. Are you a team or brokerage?
Yeah, we're a team.
Okay. So Stephen is based out of Wichita, Kansas, and super exciting for me to be here with you today, Stephen. I know that when you started on Sisu, I think it was like 4 years ago. I looked it up, and I think it was 4 years and 3 days ago. And you were a solo agent basically at that time, right?
Correct. Yeah. Just launched my team in June of 2020. So yeah, it was really just me at that point. So I mean, I launched a team, in quotation marks. So
Yeah. So you are now, I think I saw you're up to like 60 agents. You're pacing at over 500 transactions year to date and just crushing it. So like, how do you go from that to where you are today? But you were just getting into, so let's back up before 2020. You were just getting into real estate, like brand new to real estate, weren't you?
yeah, I originally got into real estate as an investor back in 2014. So I was working my corporate job at that time and was like really, I saw the writing on the wall. I climbed the corporate ladder really, really quickly. And I saw these people that were I was a director, and I saw like the vice presidents of these companies, these big corporations in their 60s and still couldn't retire. And I was like, man, this is a terrible life. Like, I can't imagine doing this. At that point, I was in my mid 30s. I can't imagine doing this for another 30 years and not being in a position to retire. So I connected with a friend who was a CPA, and he was like, hey, you really need to start getting into real estate investing. And I caught the bug pretty quickly at that point. So it was really awesome to just kind of start seeing that path. And at that point, I was like, I didn't even want to do anything with real estate because I moved in 2008 for a job and bought a house. And then I ended up having to relocate. I ended up getting another promotion to a different city. And that house was on the market for like a long time, like 3 years. So empty. And I was like, oh man, I hate real estate. I never want to own a house again. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy to think now it's like where things have gone. So it's just been quite the journey to go from hating real estate, meeting a CPA that was a friend at a city that I went to, magically ran into this guy at a bar who we went to the same college, and we were in Tulsa at the time, and then we became friends. And then he was like, hey, you need to get in real estate investing. And I was like, that's a weird thing to think about right now because I can't think about real estate at all. So
Okay, so back up even a little bit further. You talked about this corporate job. So my understanding, and you haven't shared this with me, but my understanding, and I love this because everywhere I go, I always hear the term, right? It's not rocket science. But
yeah.
My understanding is you were actually a rocket scientist. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, that was originally my degree in aerospace engineering, and worked with a lot of three-letter agencies on special mission type of projects.
Okay, very cool. So, but yeah, even though you were doing something really cool, you knew that if you did it for another 30 years, you wouldn't be able to retire.
Yeah, I already knew I just knew like the corporate life just kind of sucks, especially when you're an entrepreneur, right? Even at that point, I was listening to the early teachings of Gary Vee. I mean, started the early YouTube, and I was like, man, I really feel like I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I did end up getting an MBA kind of along the way because I started on the management track into the corporate world. But, I was running these huge, massive, multi-discipline organizations doing really crazy projects, right? And I was like, man, like this should be really cool. This should be something as a kid that I would thought would be amazing. And I really just did not like it that much. Just people didn't want to do their job. People are like, well, that's above my pay grade. And that's how I kept climbing the corporate ladder, because like, I'll just do it. I don't care. I don't care what my pay
Yeah.
grade is, And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden they're like, hey, do you want this promotion? I'm like, sure, I'll take that promotion. And it just kept going up the ladder from there, and to where I ended up as a director of a consulting company for, the CIA, FBI, and stuff like that. So
Cool. We'll thank Gary V for your entrepreneurship. And so shout out to you, Gary V. Also, it's interesting to me. I think the hardest thing for people who come from that kind of background where you've been in this corporate job is saying, hey, I'm walking away from a salary. Like most people can't do that. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Most people are afraid of making that leap. How did you feel about that?
So I had like a plan. My plan was by the time I was 40, I would have enough real estate that I could back out at that point. So that was originally my plan. What ended up happening was it was around 2017. My bosses came to me and were like, "Hey, we don't like that you're doing real estate investing on the side." And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, what's the issue? And they were like, we just don't like it. We think that we want more of your time here. And I'm like, look, guys, like my projects are on time. They're on budget. Like I'm driving most of the profitability for the company on my projects. Like, what more do you want? And I'm like, I'm maxing out on my bonuses. Like, what else is there for me here? And they're like, well, we just want more of that. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to back away from real estate investing. Why? That doesn't make any sense. And they're like, well, if you don't want to back off real estate investing, then, you need to find a different job. And I was like, I just shook their hands and left.
That's amazing.
So,
like, why? That is such a fixed mindset, right?
yeah. Yeah.
That's insane to me.
And I even told them, I'm like, so if I went home and watched TV at night, you wouldn't have an issue with that. But the fact that I'm like going out, meeting with real estate agents, buying properties, doing rehabs, turning things into rentals, you have an issue with that? Like, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
And
a bunch of my sales guys are actually real estate investors, right? They always, you ask them what their goals are, and they're always talking about buying new homes. And we love that, right? We want them to be independently wealthy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was just really wild. But they were, so originally the company that I was worked at was started by an entrepreneur, and which is what attracted me to that company. But that guy sold it to a big corporation. So then this big corporations bring these two, you know, executives that were in their 60s. And I think I think a lot of it was just jealousy. They were just jealous.
Yeah.
And I think for them, it's just like they wanted to like figure out a way to kind of put me in a corner and just kind of like check me a little bit. And it was hard because I was making over, in Wichita, Kansas, which is a pretty affordable place to live. I was making $180,000 a year, so it was not something, it was going 180 to zero. That was quite the kick in the pants.
Well, again, it takes grit to do that. And these guys had jealousy because they could never go beyond their salary, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't have the grit to do that. So you go from real estate investor to now. Is this why you had to start a real estate team, or go into selling real estate, I should say?
Well, originally, I didn't even have my license at that point. So I ended up getting my license because I was like, well, at least if I'm still going to be buying and selling houses, then I could at least make some extra money from that, because I was using realtors to list my properties and to buy properties with. So I'm like, okay, well, at least I can make some revenue off that. I really had no desire to be a realtor at that point. And then by the end of 2017, especially in our market here in Wichita, it became hard to find good deals. Wholesalers started to really infiltrate. We started to get a lot of out-of-state investors kind of overpaying for properties because the rent ratios were really good. So I was at a point where I was like, okay, well, sometimes I'm making more money on my real estate fees than I actually am on my flips. So maybe I just need to dive a little bit more into this real estate world and become a realtor and really understand that part of it. And obviously at this point too, the banks were starting to really question me on financing because, they figured out I lost my $108,000 job. So it's not as attractive to give you money to lend. So the amount of loans I was able to get went down. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll try this real estate thing a little bit and see how that goes. So
and this was 2017?
Yeah. So 2018 is when I kind of fully, at the beginning of 2018 is when I fully committed to being a realtor, to
Okay.
work with actual clients. So,
Okay. Awesome. So moving forward, so you started selling real estate,
yep,
and when you got Sisu in 2020, you were a standalone agent, right? So
correct.
you
Yeah.
had in your mind you wanted to build a team at that point, or
Well, what happened was kind of COVID opened my eyes. So, I was really good at generating leads online. So I was really, at that point, really flexing Facebook leads at that point. And in the course of like 2 years, I created a database of like around 10,000 leads. And, I was still trying to figure out CRMs. I was still trying to figure out, how to work with clients, still trying to figure out sales. I was trying to figure out all these things, but I had a bunch of leads. Well, during COVID, when everything shut down, I started following up with all the leads I said I was going to follow up with. And I followed up with them and I'm like, they're like, oh, I bought a house. Oh, I bought a house. Oh, I bought a house. And I'm like, geez, I am like spending all this time and I'm working a lot of hours and I missed out on all this opportunity, but I can't really blame myself because I just didn't have the capacity to do that. So I really figured out and I hired my first coach April of 2020 or May of 2020. And he was like, well, you need an ISA, And I'm like, okay. And he's like, you also need an assistant. And I was like, okay. He's like, that will help you kind of leverage yourself. So I hired my first assistant June 1st of 2020. And then I hired my first ISA July 1st of 2020. And then it was kind of off to the races for me in terms of production. I mean, that year, I pretty much 2020, even though it was kind of a crazy year, I almost sold 100 houses myself. So, but again, like I'm tapped out on bandwidth. Then things just started to get really crazy, right? Everything was getting crazy at that point
yeah,
because I had all these people. And then I called somebody, I was at EXP at the time, and I called like my sponsor, and he was like, hey, you really need to talk to this guy, Matt Smith. And Matt Smith, I said, hey, Matt, like I'm trying to do this thing. I'm trying to figure out. He's like, you need Sisu. And I'm like, perfect. I didn't even question it. I just got on the website and was like, hey, I need Sisu. So I was like, he's selling 800 homes a year. I'm going to take whatever, I'm one person. I'm selling, at that point, my biggest year was 30 sales, in 2019. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go buy Sisu, So yeah. And then ever since then, it's kind of been a core function of my business. So,
when you bought Sisu, like what were you thinking? Like what was it going to do for your business?
well, my whole plan when I first got Sisu was really understanding because I kept getting all these buyer agencies signed, I kept getting all these listings assigned, and I just didn't really have a good way of tracking any of that, And I was like, I was using spreadsheets, and I hate spreadsheets. I mean, from the corporate world, I really just hate spreadsheets. There's just something that bothers me because everyone's like, well, do that in a spreadsheet, do that in a spreadsheet. So I'm like, I don't want a spreadsheet. Like spreadsheet's not a good way for me, what I think, to manage and run a business. So that's what
So
I was like
you
looking at.
you were using spreadsheets to manage the contract to close process, like when somebody would go under contract, all that was in a
Correct.
spreadsheet. I see.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Which sucks,
Yeah.
it absolutely sucks. And so I'm like, okay, well, and then obviously, like, I'm not updating it correctly. And there's just a lot of factors going on. I'm not I'm an engineer. I'm more of like I'm going to go get shit done kind of person than I'm going to sit here and I'm going to go create chaos. And then somebody's going to have to kind of figure out the chaos part. So, but there wasn't really a good way to show me, okay, how many buyer agencies do I assign? How many listing agreements? What is my commission I have coming due to me? Like I didn't have any of those things at my disposal. And so that's where I was like, really like, okay, I need something to fill those gaps. So, and I mean, and I had people recommend to me, what is that spreadsheet thing? I don't even know what it's called. It's CTE or something like that. I don't
Yeah.
even know what it's
Yeah.
called. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I got on the website. I think I downloaded it. I'm like, no, there's no way I'm using this. This looks like my nightmare. So, so yeah. So then I, started plugging away at Sisu, and I really just spent like a couple days on the weekend and just really got deep into it and started building out like my task list and my, kind of what I wanted to do from a process point, and just really, started taking off from there. And ever since then, everything that we've done has been tracked in Sisu.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So now you have gone, talk to me about how you started recruiting agents and how, like, to not have a team in 2020 and to now have a team of 60 agents. That's very impressive, especially for someone who was pretty much brand new to real estate at that time. So, how have you done that? And
Well, I mean,
it's interesting. I'll add this to as well because my sales team always comes up to me and they're like, the biggest hurdle we have to overcome is we've got all these teams that have like 3 to 5 agents, and they say we'll get Sisu when we get more agents. Like, what
yeah.
advice would you have for those type of people?
Well, I think like for me, like I just kind of, I didn't know necessarily where I wanted to go, but I knew I wanted to do big things. I mean, I don't want to live my life where I don't do big things. And that's why, I was interested in climbing the corporate ladder quickly. But if I was going to do a real estate team, I just didn't want to half-ass do a real estate team. And I feel like that's very common in the real estate team space, is like they don't want to make the investments. They don't want to buy the leads. They don't want to set up a CRM. They just be like, well, hey, I'm a good agent. I'm going to start a team. And I just didn't want that to be me because I kind of, before I even had a real estate team, I had kind of a sour taste in my mouth because I saw some of these real estate teams and how they were operating. And I just wasn't really like, that's not how I would want to operate a real estate team. So I had this idea of what I wanted and where I wanted to go. Did I envision that, 4 years later, I'd be at 60 plus agents? No, I had no clue that that was where I was going to go, but I just knew that I wanted to be able to bring agents on in a system that I could train to and that I could coach to. So
So,
yeah, so that's really what became big for me in getting Sisu because then I could really understand not only my own metrics, but then all their metrics as well.
so we started doing these quarterly events where we let people see behind the scenes of my wife's business, right?
Mhm.
And see how they're leveraging Sisu to run their business. I know you've come to 2 of those now. One, I think, was about a year ago. One was like when we first started doing these a few years ago. Like, did that change your perspective on how to run a business, or what value did you get from that?
Yeah, I mean, it really just gave me some insight on how to better leverage Sisu. And it just gave me a lot of insight to that. I think some of the things that people don't really understand is, there's a lot of chaos behind these real estate teams, and they just understand that it's okay to have some chaos because, even with meeting Spring and Justin for the first time, they're like, yeah, we had to change some of the ways we're doing things because we were doing them wrong, and it's just refreshing to hear that because you don't always hear that when you see
Mm-hmm.
people give a speech or whatever. It's like, man, it's challenging, right? Even hearing, I saw Spring speak in Nashville a few months ago, and just even now, they're still with the market
Yeah.
changing, they're adapting their business, and just hey, we're all in the same boat here, and it's not easy, it's not simple. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of personalities, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that just really opened my eyes. I mean, we started using some of their stuff for, having VAs help recruit agents, some of the scripts that Justin was using to schedule appointments with agents, and obviously just leveraging the task list at a higher level, using Sisu, the numbers at a higher level. It's just kind of all that stuff that they kind of go over. I mean, there was a lot of really good information.
Cool. So, congratulations on your success, by the way. Getting to the
Thanks.
size you are is amazing. So, how did you do it? Like, okay, great. We've talked a little bit about, okay, you've seen how they did it, but like,
Yeah.
how did you actually do it? How did you in 4 years go from no agents to 60 agents?
I mean, I think a lot of it was I got lucky with the people that I hired originally. I mean, I think that's a lot of it. Two of my first three hires are still with me to this day. I mean, I think that really says a lot that they saw the vision that where we wanted to go. They bought into it. And so the fact that, you have people within your organization that have been here in 4 years and they have plugged in the holes. So one started as an ISA and worked her way up to general manager and then now transitioning into a different role because her husband moved out of the country. And then I had another one who was my first ISA. He was actually my original lender. And when things started to go crazy, I was like, hey, man, like, I understand that you're a lender, but I really need some help on this ISA part. And you're a great salesperson. Can you help step in and be an ISA? And so I got him to convince him to kind of give up lending and become an ISA. But now he's, full circle. He's running the mortgage company. So, because we ended up starting a mortgage company in 2022. So, having those people that really come in and do big things helps a lot. So
I think one of the biggest challenges for most real estate team owners is surrounding themselves with great people because they are afraid of making that initial investment. Like,
yeah,
it's a challenge to say, hey, let's just say I'm making 200 grand, 300 grand a year as a team leader. And now I'm going to pay this guy 120 grand a year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fear that's going to come into most people, right? So did you have that? Did you have those kind of thoughts, and how did you overcome those?
I mean, I wish I could say I did, but
if you didn't, that's even better. But why did you not? I mean, what was your thinking in bringing in these people to take your business to the next level?
I just really again, I just kind of knew where I wanted to go, right? Like I just knew, obviously just kind of being in the business world is I know you need people to grow your business. I mean, that's just what you need, right? Like no matter how good at systems and processes you have to have people to grow your business. So I just knew if I didn't have those people, then I'm going to be stuck doing jobs that I don't want to be doing or that I don't have the bandwidth to do. And so, so it's really important for me to really make those kind of leaps going forward.
Yeah.
So for me, I guess like just being a classic entrepreneur, right? I mean, I think part of it is when I was, real estate investing too, is like first house I, remodeled, I did it myself. Well, that sucks. You can only do one of those. So, so then you just hire contractors and then you build teams of contractors. And then, I just always knew, obviously coming from the corporate world and being in a team environment, managing massive teams, you just know the real value of a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you started as a real estate investor. You now have a team that's doing big things. How's the real estate investment business today?
I would say now I'm kind of where I'm at with my real estate business. It's starting to pick up. I've kind of taken the gas off of that to focus on this, just because I only had so much bandwidth to focus on things. So
yeah. So you were getting more money from building a real estate team than you were getting from making real estate investments.
Correct. Yeah. I was focusing on the growth. So I was taking my money and reinvesting it back in my company or investing it into starting other companies to help serve my companies. So just because, again, I knew where I wanted to go and I knew that real estate, I mean, I still obviously have a portfolio, but it hasn't been something I've really focused or grown here in the past few years.
Yeah. Okay. So you also talked about ancillary businesses. And one of the things you told me before we got on this call is that you want to focus on driving higher attach rates to your ancillary businesses. You've started a mortgage company. You have a title company. Are those the ancillary businesses you have?
Yeah. So I have I started mortgage first. Started that in 2022. And I just started title this year. I started insurance this year. And then property management about a year ago. So.
Okay. So now when we look at this, you have your investment business, you have your real estate business, you have your mortgage business, you have your title business, and you have your insurance business. Did you say property management as well?
Correct. Yeah. Property management.
So you're up to 6 different businesses. So you've gone from being an employee making $180,000 a year to an entrepreneur that owns 6 businesses, all of which are fed from this massive real estate machine that you've developed. So congratulations. So now this year, you just told me before we got on this call, you're focused on driving higher attach rates. How do you do that? Because there's so much opportunity there, right? I mean, I know many people are making, $100,000 a month or more per each of those businesses they have. So it's a massive opportunity.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, so one of the biggest things I think that stuck out to me, I went to a YLocal conference in 2021 and Tom Ferry spoke and he was saying something and I'm probably going to misquote it, but it struck a chord with me is there was I think something like $300 billion in real estate commissions in 2020, but 1.7 trillion in real estate services, and I was like, man, that's a big piece of the pie that is just, that's just going away. And again, like I saw it, right? Like as a team, so as I started growing my team, I mean, mortgage became a big bottleneck for me because the amount of leads that we were doing, no lender could keep up to them. They would always be like, "Oh, I can handle your leads," and they would be like, "Actually, no, I can't." And I'm like, "Okay, well, obviously, as me, as kind of having that system and process background from being an engineer, I'm like, okay, well, I just need to control this because no one else is going to control it the way I want to control it." Now, I will say on the flip side, starting mortgage was a lot more challenging than I thought it would be, but it's just because it did require a lot more attention than I thought I would have to give it. But I mean, that's so.
So I want to stop at that for a second because it's funny. Spring had her own title business, and I kept telling her, I'm like, babe, you need to start a mortgage company. Like, there's more money in mortgage than title. And she was doing great on title, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And she's like, I don't want to have to go get licensed. I don't want to have to learn mortgage. I don't want to do this, right? So
yeah,
finally she made it very clear. And so I said, you know what? I'll do it then. So anyway, because of that, Sisu has a sister company called Simply Mortgage. We also have Simply Title and Simply Insurance, but we're really focused on the mortgage side more today. And it's to solve exactly what you just talked about, right? You have your own mortgage company, but you had to go get licensed. You had to do all the things. And
yeah,
now Spring has her own mortgage company now because she's partnered with Simply, who we have a joint venture with her. And she didn't have to do any of that, right? We do it
yeah.
all for her. All she has to do is feed the business with her leads and help us promote it and stuff like that. But as far as that goes, like all the back office is 100% handled by Sisu. So I just wanted to point that out now because we wish we would have caught you in time. But certainly we've made it much easier than anybody else I've seen in the space for a team owner to actually get into mortgage. So if you guys are thinking right now as you listen to Steven talk about his mortgage business, this is something we can turn up for you very quickly. We will do all the work. We'll recruit your LO. We'll get all the licensing done. We'll do
Yeah.
everything. All you have to do is feed it. So on
Yep.
that note,
Yeah.
so you now have this mortgage business, and here 2 years later, it's now going well. How difficult was it for you to get it to where it is today?
If you've been enjoying Grit, please help us continue to grow the channel by leaving a 5-star review and sharing it with a friend. Now back to Grit.
It was pretty difficult. One of the things I always say is every lesson I learned, I feel like I had to learn it the hard way. So just because, you think to yourself, like, okay, mortgage is going to be pretty simple, especially for me being, having the background I did. And I think at the end, it's not really all that complicated. But again, it's like, there is, we had to hire LOs and then we had to hire LOAs and then I had to train processors and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, this is a lot more than just bringing on an LO, when you start a whole
Yeah.
mortgage company. So,
Yeah.
and then you're having, because we're a broker shop. So then you're having to learn, okay, well, each lender that you send business to, they operate a little differently. So then we had to take into account for all their differences. And so there was just a lot of different factors kind of going into it. And then also, on top of it, I'm sure a lot of people that run teams run into that is like I start to become the evil empire over here, and they don't want to accept our pre-qualifications because they don't want the fact that I know that I'm getting paid multiple ways on deals. So we have some agents that kind of fight back on us on that, but over time that has kind of gone away because we've been successful in closing on time and having our people are pre-qualified and just kind of going through all those different dynamics. So it's really a whole different business, and it's a whole different. They're similar in some ways, and they're a lot different in some ways too. And so you really have to kind of manage that in through it. So
I think when we think about starting a mortgage or a title company or an insurance company, the first thought we have is, oh, how much money can I make from it? But the reality is, if the thought we had was, how can I provide a better experience for my customer? Because you actually can, right? You
Yeah.
can ensure that they can close in 3 weeks versus
Yep.
they go to some credit union and they can close in 5 weeks and you have to push out your deadlines. And now there's fees that are involved and all this stuff and it's chaos. It can be so much easier by controlling that end-to-end experience for the consumer, right?
Oh, Yeah, and it's great, especially for us now. I mean, we have buyer consultations now, especially with the new rule changes, right? Like we're really focusing on bringing people to the office. We were before the rule changes, because that's one of the things that slash for let's go back to Sisu. I really understood from 2020 that my success rate of people that signed a buyer agency with me or with one of our agents, their close rate was so much higher than someone who didn't, right? So from the beginning of the team, or really been 2021, I'm like, guys, we have to sign buyer agencies with everyone. Like, it works. Like, it works to get these people committed to you. We think to ourselves, like, oh, it's just a piece of paper that they have to sign, but man, the numbers show me a totally different conversion rate from a buyer shopping to closing.
So
Like,
stop right there for a second. So like I know sometimes people think, oh, if I have to pay Sisu, $300 or $500 a month, or if you're a big team, maybe $1,000 a month.
right.
But like, how much money did you actually make by actually knowing that information that you
Right.
make more money because of those buyers? Like, there's little
Yeah.
things that you discover like that. I mean, for me, it's on a weekly basis, right? There's little
Yeah.
things you discover where you can make that little shift that actually turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. And some people hesitate to say, "Oh, I need to spend 300 or $500 a month for that."
Yeah. No, it's a hundred
How do you
percent.
feel about that? You never had the hesitation, but there's so many people that do. What advice do
Yeah.
you have for those people?
If we're talking about like investing in technology, I think it's really important to really understand the core fundamentals of your business. I mean, there's no corporation on this earth that does not know their numbers. So if you're not really understanding your numbers and where your money is coming from, and where your revenue is coming from, and where your profit margins are, you're just not really doing a good service to your business and to the people that are on your team, because they want to know those numbers too. I mean, when it comes to our coaching sessions, be like, well, the reason you're struggling is because we're not getting buyer agency signed, or we're not meeting people at the appointment. Like, what do we can start dissecting the process on where they are failing, because I know, we know our global metrics from Sisu, and we know where agents are falling below those metrics. And okay, well, we need to coach you up on your appointments, on setting an appointment, or we need to coach you up on how to meet an appointment, or we need to coach you up on how to get a buyer agency signed or a listing agreement signed. I mean, it just allows us to dissect and really train those people at better levels, so they understand where they're falling short or where they can improve. And then also it allows us to find people that are exceeding those targets that we have, and then help guide the team into what's working for them, so they can contribute back to the organization by like, hey, this is how I'm getting my buyer agency signed, or hey, this is how I'm getting my listing agreement signed, because I have a 90% success rate of it. And then there's agents that are, we all have agents that are below the metric, and they're telling us that their people just don't want to work with them or something, or people just don't want to sign that buyer agency. It's like, well, that's not true, because we have people exceeding the metrics here, and so they're running the same people you are. It's just all a numbers game. So
Yeah,
it
well
also
said.
it also helps too, because I think sometimes agents, especially newer agents, they have a hard time really understanding that you're not going to close 100% of the people you meet with. And I think that that's really like they kind of will beat themselves up on somebody that fires them, or someone that
Mhm.
doesn't want to sign an agreement with them. And I'm like, guys, the numbers are the numbers. It's fine. Like we're not here to shoot 100%. If we get 70% of our people that we meet signed, that's success in my mind, right? Like, the numbers tell us that this is what you're going to make with this number of people. So,
And as soon as you know it's a
um,
numbers game, it's so much easier to say, okay, I need to have five more appointments, or
yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah,
or I need to
exactly.
have this many more conversations, because I know if I do have this many more conversations, I'm going to have this many appointments, which is now going to get me this many closings, right? So,
Yep, 100%. Yeah. And so it just makes it so much easier to really show agents the way of how to be successful. And really, when you can pull up someone else's Sisu dashboard and be like, hey, this is an agent that's making the type of money that you want to make. Here's what they're doing.
yeah, I don't know how anybody in real estate coaches their agents up without having Sisu. So,
Yeah.
what does 2024 look like to end the year for you and into 2025? I know the last 2 years have been challenging for everybody, but yet you've still been in this massive growth mode. I'd like to talk about that, but I'd also like to dive into, what do you see the end of 2024 looking like? And what are you predicting for 2025? And what are you doing to really take advantage of now the market being slowing? And now, we see more people putting their homes on the market today. We see interest rates dropping. It's going to help buyers. Like, I'd love to get your thoughts on just the whole industry today and where you guys are going to go and how you're going to take advantage of that.
So the first part is like 2024. So 2024 started off really, really well for us. Like we were really exceeding our stuff over 2023 by quite a bit. And I was like, man, this is going to be an awesome year. And then we hit June, and I don't know exactly what happened, but this is the nice thing about Sisu, because I can see immediately in June that my business was not going the direction it needed to be going. I could tell that all my lead indicators were starting to fall. So I was like, wait, what happened? So, I think at that point, I don't necessarily know exactly what happened, but at some point consumer behavior started to happen. I think the agents started to get a little bit, maybe complacent a little bit with kind of the fact that the consumer behavior was changing a little bit. And we really started to focus on like, all right, well, we need to have massive amount more conversations. Conversations was something we talked about, and stress was important, but we didn't really focus on it all that much. I focused on more like setting appointments and meeting appointments than anything. But then we started turning our business back into, let's focus on these conversations. And for us, we use Follow Up Boss. So getting all that activity in Follow Up Boss, like stop using your personal number, stop doing that. Everything needs to be in Follow Up Boss. And then, so then we were able to kind of hit that plateau, and then now we're back on the upward trend. So really focusing on really good conversations. So that's really been our big focus in the second half of 2024. And that has turned our business around where I wanted to go, because I was like, man, we're not going to grow this year. We're not going to exceed our count this year. And I thought back in March, we were going to exceed it by a few hundred. Now I think we're going to probably end up somewhere tracking accordingly, maybe somewhere around 650, 700, which is still going to be 100 more units than last year, which is great, right? Like sales are down.
Yeah.
So
there aren't many people who have done that in this market. So congratulations on that. But what I love is that you actually saw those lead measures dropping, and you knew instantly, if I don't get these up, my business is going to be down, right?
Yeah.
And so you made the shift and you went for conversations instead of just appointments, because you realize it takes more conversations to get an appointment, right? Is that why you did that? Yeah.
Yeah. And then also I figured out too that a lot of these, a lot of buyers were getting, sellers were hesitant, right? They're a lot more hesitant. So we need to have better conversations to get them to feel like they were doing the right thing, as opposed to, them just waiting on the sideline, and who knows what's going to change for them to get off the sideline, but really talk through them, because again, interest rates, they did fall, right? And they're the lowest they've been since beginning of 2023, but a lot of them are in their heads. The interest rates are still really high, right? And then now we got more inventory now than we have since COVID. And some of the buyers are like, well, there's too much inventory. But like, no, we still, like, if we were back before COVID, we would consider this an inventory shortage. It's just double what it was during 2021 and 2022. So just kind of having those conversations and being able to really get through those objections that they have and providing better information to them. And so really focusing on the agents on having those kind of conversations with their clients, as opposed to be like, oh, you want to wait till next year to buy? That's fine. I'll wait till next year. Right. So really starting to understand that quality conversations really became a lot more important in the second half of this year. And I know everyone can say the election, the economy, all that plays into it, but I still don't want my business to go down. I really think, honestly, that this is the best time to buy since COVID. So, we have more inventory, you have more options on the market. Interest rates are in the fives now. So, what's really preventing us from moving forward? You're able to get your closing costs paid for. If you need down payment assistance, that's available now. So all these things that people need in order to really move forward, it's available right now. So we really just got to coach them into knowing that, because obviously who knows what's going to happen. Like, I think 2025, I think it's going to be a tough year again. I don't think anything is showing that 2025 is going to be, hoping it's better, but I don't think it's going to be dramatically better. It's not going to be 2021 or 2022, but I still think it's going to be a challenging year, and just really focusing on having these really good conversations and providing value. I mean, we're really big on how to, really great customer service, really great programs. Like we have a Love Our Listed program. We have all these other things to really try to help buyers or sellers move the needle.
As I listen to you, 100% of what you say, I'm sorry, but 100% of what you say is essentially control what you can control, right? Know your numbers, know where you can focus. Don't listen to the media. Don't listen to the market. Don't listen to the consumer. If you do listen to the consumer, it's really to get feedback on what adjustments you should make in your business and the things you can control.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So you started saying something about...
Oh, yeah. But I was just going to say, Sisu really allows us, was one of the things that has allowed us to make sure we provide customer service, because we have our touch points from our transaction team or operations team to reach out to the buyers or the sellers to make sure they're having a good service. We try to have that white glove approach with our clients. We don't always succeed in that. We still have room to grow, but it's still something that we constantly have that we're focusing and tweaking. But having those, hey, transaction department, please reach out to them to make sure they're good with everything, because you can't always count on the agents to do what they need to do.
Do you have the Sisu client portal set up for your clients?
I have not. I need to. That's one of the things that's on my list to need to do. So
I would just suggest it, because it doesn't take long. In an hour, you could have it set up. It'll just pull in all your things that you're checking off, your TCs during the transaction closing process. And you can choose which of those are client facing and change the verbiage of them.
Yeah.
So that they can see exactly, okay, we just got a sign in our yard. Okay, we just had the appraisal. And what's next? So they see the whole step of the way. My personal opinion is that is the future of real estate.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's the future of everything. When I order DoorDash, I know when it's sitting on my doorstep. I know the whole step, every step of the way, right? Same thing with Amazon. And a lot of people think of Domino's for starting that, but like everybody does that now. So anyway, I think it's just a key, and it does truly provide better customer service and communication.
Yeah, 100%. No, it's definitely something that is on my project list to implement this winter. So,
well, if we can help with that, just reach out to your account manager and they'll dive in and make it easy on you. So you don't have to take a full weekend. Take an hour instead. All right. Last advice, Stephen. What would you say is the most important thing for somebody that wants to build a real estate business? I mean, there's so many people, I think, right now that are sitting at that 3 to 5 agents. There's so many people that are sitting at 15 agents that are like, geez, should I just go back into selling real estate myself? People don't know what to do today. There's a lot of confusion I'm seeing.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is really important, and this is something that I just knew from the beginning, is really just get your tech stack dialed in. I think it's really important to spend the time, spend the money on getting your tech stack dialed in, because it's just so important to really understand for both you and your agents what they need to be doing and how to coach them, right? And then that just allows us on our recruiting appointments, we can literally show our Sisu dashboard and be like, hey, this is how many appointments our ISA set last month. This is how many leads we got last month. This is, so it makes it so much easier to recruit people, because you have a way to bring them in and coach them up and that. But then it's also like, hey, I'm not bullshitting you. I'm not lying to you. I'm not telling you that you're going to make all this money. Here's somebody that is on our team that is taking these appointments from the ISA and is having this kind of success. Or this is somebody that is an SOI driven agent, and this is what their success looks like. And so then you can have agents start to model those agents, and you have real numbers to show them that it's not just like a hope and pray kind of situation.
So you're actually leveraging Sisu dashboards to let these people see what some of your other agents are doing and how they're growing their business in order to recruit more agents.
Yeah. I don't even show my competitors my Sisu dashboard. I don't care, right? Like, I'm like, hey, this is what, like on my market, like, hey, you want to see what we're doing? Here's our numbers.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
love
care.
it. So you're saying the most important thing to do is to get a good tech stack. You obviously did that the first thing. Your tech stack, I just heard, is Sisu and Follow Up Boss. Anything else?
We're using Rooster and Wilopo.
Okay. Again, guys, Sisu and Follow Up Boss. You have Follow Up Boss. You're going to need some sort of lead gen.
Yeah, and Follow Boss, I mean, ever since you guys had that two-way integration with them, it makes it so much easier. I mean, when I was originally started, we had Lofty Chime at the time, but that was a lot more difficult to do it. But now with the way Follow Boss and Sisu talk to
Yeah.
each other, it's so easy.
Our follow-up boss integration is amazing, and everybody tells us that. So
Yeah,
listen to Steven here, guys. That makes it easy if you have that. Steven, thank you so much. I love hearing your story. I love, even more than anything, I love seeing your success, and I love being a part of it. I love that we have had you out to events and that you've just like taken it and run. So if there's ever anything I can do for you, let me know, my friend. It's great to see you, and thanks for joining us on the show today. For all of you listeners, again, like the show, follow us. And obviously, we have a lot of team leaders on this show. We have a lot of tech entrepreneurs. But I think if you will take their advice and follow their footsteps, you don't have to go through the hard and difficult challenges and trying to figure everything out. Just do what they're doing and it works. That I can promise you. So have a great week, everyone. We'll catch you on next week's episode of the Grit Podcast. And again, thank you, Steven Myers, for joining us on the show today.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on our podcast. If you have an interest in a free 7-day trial of Sisu, go to sisu.co, sisu.co. Make sure that you use the coupon code GRIT, that's GRIT, to waive all your setup fees and receive a 10% discount on your subscription. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and want to subscribe, search GRIT, the Real Estate Growth Mindset, on iTunes, Spotify, or Podbean. And with that, we'll catch you next time. Take care.